Consider that a standing order.
Everybody, and welcome back to part 2 of the Halo retrospective. Today we're going to be taking a look at the multiplayer components of the Halo games and of course reviewing and ranking them from best to worst. Starting off, right off the bat, I want to make sure you guys understand I am going to be looking at the Master Chief Collection ports of these games. As you all know, the Master Chief Collection has its own slew of issues with server connections and stuff of that nature, so please understand this does not completely 100% accurately reflect the earlier Halo games that were released in the multiplayer components they had. I honestly only played during the Halo 3, Reach, and 4 era of Halo multiplayer, so I do not have the full opinions on Halo 2 and 1 and stuff of that nature. With that all out of the way, I do want you guys just to understand when I'm reviewing these products, I am specifically talking about the Master Chief Collection ports. Later, maybe when we get to spin-offs, I'll cover some of the Halo fan mods and fan servers that are still running for the PC ports of Halo 1 and 2, but in the meantime, I just want to make sure you guys all understand I'm going to be looking at the Master Chief Collection, so if my opinion seems a little different from what you remember or the gameplay you experienced back in the day, please understand that it's from the modern 343 rebuilds of these games, not necessarily the games they came from, so just make sure you guys understand the clarification there, and without further ado, let's get straight into it. Alright, starting off with Halo Combat Evolved. The multiplayer here is as clean and cut as can be. A lot of game modes consist of everyone's favorite Team Deathmatch Slayer mode, where you and your team of 4 go into a big arena and just start shooting at each other. In all honesty, a lot of headshots are going to be shot, a lot of teleporting shenanigans, grabbing active camo to sneak up behind people with a well-placed back melee attack to assassinate them. All of that good stuff is here on display, and a bunch of power weapons and stuff will spawn throughout the arena, causing you to pick them up and go for big kills and hopefully get the infamous killing spree and carry your team to victory. That's the Slayer mode, that's the most common one, you all know it, and of course we have modes like King of the Hill, where you hold a hill and try to stay on it as long as possible before the enemy team could push you off. You got your infamous modes like Oddball, where you carry a skull, again for a very long amount of time as your teammates will protect you. You run around the map taking teleporters and the sword to make sure you don't get blown up, and well, you guys get the gist. There are a couple of different ways to play the game. You have 2v2, which is the more duo fights, a little more competitive, just you and a friend teaming up with each other, taking down another team and really putting your skills to the test. You have the 4v4 fights, a slightly bigger battle, bunch of arenas, a lot of moving parts and stuff, not necessarily vehicles in play yet. When you get to 8v8, that's where you have the big team battles, these massive battles that take places on the infamous maps like Blood Gulch, where you and your teammates are going to be driving across canyons and waterfalls and all that cool shenanigans, taking warthogs and the sorted, blowing up things and going crazy. It's always a blast playing on maps of that nature. So overall, how is Combat Evolved's multiplayer compared to, well, everything else? It's the one that started it all, and I like it quite a bit. Halo Combat Evolved's multiplayer is extremely simple to pick up and play. It's really easy getting the hang of things. You just get a magnum pistol, aim for the head, let the bullets fly, and hopefully get the kill, or hopefully you don't die when you get into a firefight. It's pretty simplistic. All you do is just save up ammo, get the assault rifle, and use it in times of need. It mainly just boils down to snipe off battles with the magnum pistol and maybe even a sniper rifle every once in a while. And if you know your spawns, you can pick up a rocket launcher and blow the competition away. It's a lot of fun. These battles are pretty simple, and I honestly did prefer the 4v4 matches because it's a lot more contained, not a lot of dead time as you take a warthog over to a certain area or things of that nature. It's just pretty relaxed, and I really did enjoy the overall gunplay and combat here. It's a little janky at times, it feels a little more floaty than the other Halo games and a lot more slow paced, but I kinda liked that feeling of it, and the time to kill is honestly really fast. I don't know if it's because of the way the health system works, but it's just much quicker than the other Halo Halo games, right? Not a lot of downtime for you to just recharge shields to get out of there. It's very go, 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 right? When you're starting to get shot at, you better turn around quick, get those headshots off if you can, or if not, just you're gonna have to bite the dust and die. You know, it's a punishing game, all things considered, and I do enjoy the time to kill being much faster, getting you right back into the action as quickly as possible. The 4v4 combat is just a lot of fun, and the maps on display are really good. My personal favorite being Wizard. It's just a really cool map where you're walking around doing a lot of interesting things. There's a lot of different vantage points for you to take snipes from. Teleporters, of course, are always great, and the power weapons that spawn here are just a ton of fun to mess around with. Halo Combat Evolved doesn't really have a lot going for it in terms of core gameplay. It's just more of the Halo same, and I just genuinely enjoyed how it's the first, right? It's kind of interesting to see how things will progress later in the future. The combat overall just feels great. The netcode here never had too many issues, minus a couple of server issues I had where I'd randomly get connected to servers nowhere near the East Coast. I would get connected to the West Coast, Australia at one point, all sorts of ridiculous placements, and that caused the lag to be absolutely atrocious. I mean, people were teleporting and stuff. I couldn't quite get all the footage for it, unfortunately, so enjoy the typical b-roll I have rolling here, but there were a lot of instances where the game just had a lot of laggy matches, and that wasn't a lot of fun. Again, this is more of a Master Chief Collection thing, I'm sure, considering the core of Halo's multiplayer is supposed to be you and your friends getting together for some split-screen shenanigans, which was what Halo Combat Evolved thrived on, and of course, if you were lucky enough, you could system link with a couple of CRT TVs and go for those full 8v8 battles, right, if you had the Xboxes to suffice. Overall, Halo's Combat Evolved's multiplayer is the simplest of all the multiplayer modes, but it is just a ton of fun. There's not a lot of super high octane special abilities or Spartan abilities you pick up. It is just good old fundamentals. You know, you got some good aim, you find some vehicles every once in a while, get some nice ammo, get a power weapon that's a little bit broken, like the rocket launcher and the splash damage being way too massive. Maybe pick up an overshield or two to cover yourself from all the incoming fire, and if you want to be cheeky, pick up that active camouflage and sneak behind enemy lines and go for a cheeky quad kill. There is all sorts of good stuff that goes on in display with Halo Combat Evolved, and the maps and stuff are pretty well made. For the online portion, it didn't feel like it was too strenuous, right? It was the one out of all of the four that worked the most, in my opinion, so thumbs up for me. Moving on, we have Halo 2. Now, Halo 2 is the most infamous one, right? Or should I say famous one. Everyone loves Halo 2 for better or for worse. It is everyone's favorite Halo multiplayer for the most part, and I can definitely agree with that. There is something that is very natural with the ebb and flow of Halo 2. Basically, it's a second verse, same as the first here, and not a lot has fundamentally changed, minus the systems in Halo 2 being a little bit different from how Halo 1 was, mainly having the time to kill be much higher, because instead of you having to pick up health kits or scramble and things of that nature, all you have to do in this version of Halo is take a little bit of cover, just like the new armor that was presented in Halo 2, and that makes combat feel a little bit more tactical. The maps definitely help in this regard, especially Outpost, right? This is one of my all-time favorite 4v4 maps because there's so many different vantage points for you to snipe, and it's really cool to have your whole team kind of pull out, figure out the exact place to post up, lob a bunch of grenades into a tight bunker, and force all of those Spartans to run out like roaches, right? And you're picking them off one by one with the beautiful battle rifle. And speaking of the battle rifle, this thing does not play games. It is a 3-round burst weapon that is absolutely destructive in multiplayer combat. If you aim for the dome and you fire off 2 to 3 bursts, these guys will melt with damage and they just don't have a chance of coming back. It's also really satisfying to do a couple of melee attacks and then throw the burst out. It's all good fun, and everything here on display, thanks to the new weapons that were provided in Halo 2, is just a ton of fun to mess around with. Now, they didn't add too many new modes from what I've seen in the Master Chief Collection. I guess it's all the same. I'm not sure if they added them during the course of Halo 2, but for the most part, it's all this same standard stuff. You have your oddball, your capture the flag, your big team battles of the 8v8s and stuff of that nature, and of course your Slayer, right? I mainly mess around with the Slayer mode, King of the Hill, the usual objective control maps that I enjoy, and it was all pretty good. but there's only one major downside I had with Halo 2, and that's that it felt kinda janky, right? The combat here, and I'm not sure if it's the Master Chief Collection or the game itself, had this weird jank to it. Sometimes things would be a bit too floaty, sometimes my attacks just wouldn't connect at all, like I'd do a melee attack and nothing would happen, the player wouldn't take shield damage or anything at all, I'd have to fire burst at him and we both ended up dying, or I'd kill him and then he'd die way ahead of time, something stupid like that. There was a lot of issues of that nature, and I'm not sure if it was the lag the game provided or the actual game, it's hard to tell, but I'm gonna chalk it up to the Master Chief Collection not being the best. But there was a couple of issues of that nature that really held gameplay back for me, and I just wasn't the biggest fan of how some of the combat scenarios I found myself in being way too janky, or felt like I got the drop on someone and I just couldn't quite squeak out the kill for some reason, even if I was aiming completely for the head or doing a melee attack and doing what I could to make sure these guys were going to be dead. Seems like they always had just a tad bit more health than me at points, and that was really frustrating at times. Overall, it's probably more on me just being a bad Halo player, not necessarily the game itself, or chalking it up to the servers not being the best for the Master Chief Collection, but it's Halo 2. I had a really good time with it, and the time to kill being a bit longer really helped, mainly thanks to the way the maps were laid out. The maps just feel a bit more open here, and it was really nice to see him take some liberties and add some things that made it feel just a bit more unique. There's a lot more places for you to post up and take some sniping shots or sniping advantages with the battle rifle, and it feels kind of nice to go in guns blazing too with the new dual wield mechanic, allowing you to wield up to like 2 needlers or SMGs and just open fire on a bunch of enemies, causing those massive explosions with your combined needler power. There's a lot of cool moments that happened throughout the game, and overall it was a good time. All the new mechanics they added in Halo 2 just go a long way of helping the game out when you're playing the multiplayer portion of it. It's just a ton of fun and it never got old. Now Halo 3 is where combat and all that stuff really picked up for me. I actively enjoyed Halo 3's multiplayer every which way. The time to kill is actually a lot longer than the other Halo games, probably the longest in my opinion. I mean, due to the nature of the bullets being, I guess, projectile based and not necessarily hit scan based, which basically means as long as you guided your bullets in the general direction of Spartans in the last couple games, they'd hit more than likely. But in Halo 3, you actually have to wait for the bullet to physically travel and hit the players. That made time to kill a bit longer and made sniping and using the battle rifle and stuff of that nature a little bit more difficult, because you couldn't just, guide your tracer, you actually had to guide your aim, right? You actually had to pace your shots and make sure those projectiles land directly on the head and stuff of that nature, making combat a lot more difficult than it was in the previous Halo games. And honestly, I kind of enjoyed that. It made the games feel more tactical, and the way the maps and stuff were laid out felt pretty strong. There are a bunch of maps here, and unfortunately I couldn't play on all of them because the rotations for them weren't the best, and they also didn't give me a lot of names, unfortunately. But I really enjoyed how Halo 3's core multiplayer was, especially this desert map that I played in 4v4. It was really sick. There was a lot of perches and stuff you could camp up on, and it was really a blast. Halo 3's multiplayer also introduced the equipment, and that makes the multiplayer, well, add a sense of randomness to the, overall feel of it, right? Sometimes you'd have to find equipment scattered throughout the maps, and you could use them on enemies, which is really cool. Activating bubble shields to protect yourself from incoming fire is always great, and a good way to throw people off of their game, although be careful when you throw it down, because people can just power walk in there and start meleeing you to death, which is never fun. And of course you have your power drain ability, where you just instantly drain their shields to nothing and go for the perfect headshot, and boom, you could get a bunch of kills with that, hopefully without the players taking it out before you could get your shots off. There is a lot of different tactics throughout the game here, talking to your team and communicating when you want to throw down the power drain or put up a bubble shield or a regenerator to heal yourselves, all that jazz, and it makes the gameplay just overall feel pretty solid and really fast paced compared to other games. It has this nice ebb and flow once again, being able to constantly switch between equipment and different weapons, and again, the new weapons and dual wielding abilities and all that stuff really go a long way of helping the game feel just a bit more fun. The only issue I have is some of the maps feel really cramped, like you're constantly just right up on each other. I mean, there's sometimes where you just walk out of the spawn and boom, there's like 3 to 4 guys every which way, and it gets really old, basically just spawning and dying and spawning and dying, which a lot of people were going through just because of the nature of how tiny the maps were. It would be nice if the maps weren't so claustrophobic on certain 4v4 Slayer and King of the Hill and stuff of that nature maps, because it just feels really annoying being in these tight, cramped spaces, not really having a place to go. I kind of wish they fixed that, or at least separated the spawns a little bit, or did something to make it feel not as claustrophobic. For the most part, it's still really good Halo fun, and you can't go wrong with it. My only major gripe that holds us back from Halo 2 is how tight the maps are. Like, just give me a place to breathe, please. That'd be great. The team battle stuff is as beautifully chaotic as always, so nothing to complain about on that front, and it's just another great Halo time. And lastly, on our Bungie roundup, we have Halo Reach. This is another really strange game to discuss. Halo Reach is one of the first games that implemented the loadout system. Since you had those Spartan abilities you could use, like sprinting, armor locking, all of that jazz, there's a little bit of a random factor to gameplay, and I know previously it had some issues with the bloom effect, with the DMR not being as accurate, and a couple of gun balancing issues, and of course Spartan ability issues, but now it's mainly patched, right, for the Halo Master Chief Collection, and I have to say Reach's multiplayer is probably my least favorite out of all of these, surprisingly enough. There's something about Reach that just didn't really click for me for some reason. They did add some cool, interesting new game modes, like being able to have this kill confirm style mode where you kill an opponent, grab their oddball and deliver it. I thought that was kind of fun to do and really cool to interact with my teammates and coordinate attacks and get kills and, you know, drop off these oddballs. That was always interesting, with constantly moving points and stuff. That's pretty cool, right? And some of the new stuff they added, like the Forge mode and being able to create infinitely fun multiplayer maps, that's really sick. And that was a huge, you know, call to what made Halo Reach's multiplayer so unique. There were so many custom game modes like Griffball and stuff like that that were made that added to the replay factor of Halo Reach being basically infinite. And honestly, as a Halo Reach fan, I enjoyed that aspect of it a lot. The custom multiplayer modes on display here were a ton of fun to mess around with, and the Forge mode single-handedly created some of the most fun maps I've played in quite some time. However, the core multiplayer, I can't say the same for. The core multiplayer of Halo Reach was just rough. I really did not like some of the Spartan abilities on display here, mainly the armor lock. I mean, if you're a casual player, you won't really have too many issues with this, but going up against some of the higher ranked guys, they exploit the heck out of this thing. I'm talking, you'll start shooting a guy and they just start mashing armor lock on you and you have no choice but to run away. And even if you do, depending on what type of area you're in, say it's a cramped kind of claustrophobic area in Countdown or Courtyard or something, and there's not a lot of places for you to leave, you're gonna get hit by this explosion radius once armor lock is disabled or let go of, and you gotta eat a ton of damage, you know, sometimes knocking you out dead. And it's really frustrating when they could just walk up and melee you or shotgun you or whatever. The armor lock thing just wasn't clearly thought out for the multiplayer aspect of the game, and it just adds to a lot of frustrating factors. It just wasn't a ton of fun. And of course, we have to discuss some of the weapons and things. You know, they're all pretty standard stuff here. I love how powerful the DMR is. I love the needler rifle and how quickly it can eviscerate people with headshots and stuff. You know, the core gameplay, as per usual, is good stuff. You know, it's Halo Reach, and I honestly enjoy the kinetic aspect of Halo Reach, but it's the Spartan abilities and that randomness of never knowing what I'm going to encounter that makes it really frustrating. Never knowing if someone's gonna have a regeneration field or a sprint ability, or knowing whether they're gonna armor lock or whatever, jetpack away from you. It's really frustrating to take on some of these things, and some of them are just clearly much better than others. You know, active camo and holograms, you're not losing to that, dude. Like, you're gonna be able to take those guys out pretty easily, but when you have to face some of the other stuff in the game, you know, the jetpack ability just flying out of there whenever you feel like, some maps literally benefit from players having jetpacks, the armor lock thing, which is broken in close quarters types of attacks, it just really sucks not knowing what I'm going to go up against, and knowing that because of that, I'm just going to instantly die and get my entire health bar melted away because I pulled up on the wrong guy, essentially. You could get the perfect drop on someone, a couple headshots, and they can armor lock you and melee you with 2 hits, and you're just forced to die. that stuff just isn't fun, and the core combat in that nature of the game feels so random and just unbalanced that it felt really hard for me to respect it as a core just casual social experience. Now again, when it comes to the custom game modes, I'm having a blast and it's really good times, but for the core multiplayer slayer modes and stuff like that, it's super frustrating, and I kind of just could do without it. Not that it's awful multiplayer, it's still good fun, and if there are ways for you to play the game without any abilities on whatsoever, you know, through custom games and stuff, and that's the best way to play Halo Reach in my opinion. I really enjoy just the core DMR combat, right? Going for those headshots, you know, going for the SWAT modes and stuff of that nature, headshots only, all that good stuff. That's the best way to experience Halo Reach without all the special abilities on and all that jazz. Playing it casually in that regard, it's a ton of fun, and I could never pass up a session. But with all the abilities on and stuff, it's just a frustrating mess, and just made me want to quit and never pick up the controller again. And carrying on with the loadout train, we have 343's first foray into the multiplayer genre, Halo 4. I don't like Halo 4's multiplayer at all. I really don't like how the loadouts are. They're very, very frustrating not knowing what I'm going to encounter, because now we have the Halo Reach randomness factor cranked up to 43 trillion thousand. It's ridiculous the amount of stuff that goes on here. Some people are going to run battle rifles, some are going to run DMRs, some are going to run DMRs and suppressors, and that's the nastiest combo, or battle rifle and suppressor. I think you guys kind of get the gist here. The amount of random factors that are on display here with all the auto sentry abilities or hologram ability or knowing where they're going to regen field or what guns they're going to have on them, it's cranked up to like 1,000, and it's really frustrating having to deal with all this on basically every map being this really weird generic linear corridors. Now there are some more open maps, but for the most part they're just three-way lanes. You know, you have a middle lane, a left lane, and a right lane, and you just keep pushing, and it gets old really fast. You just kind of go down the same three paths throughout the entire game. There's not a lot of open-ended combat like there was in the other Halo maps, where there's teleporters and different things to do and places to explore and perks you want to get up to or ledges you want to snipe from. There's like none of that in Halo 4. It feels very robotic, right? Very rigid, and I don't really enjoy that aspect of it, and that just caused combat to kind of fall down that same familiar pattern of just kind of rush in with your team, pick a lane, get shooting. It gets old really fast, and honestly I just wasn't the biggest fan of it. Halo 4's combat just feels like it wants to be an esport is the best way to explain it. And I just wanted more. I just wanted something more out of it. So, I don't know. Hopefully, they can do that in the next game. We'll see with Halo 5 Guardians. But it just wasn't that fun. All the maps just felt like that. And even the big team battle, there's something that was just lacking here. I mean, it's still good stuff, especially being able to drop in ordnance and stuff. I guess that's always a cool little thing. As to the random factor, but hey, it's big team battle. We can have a little bit of fun here. Dropping in ordnance to get a powerful sniper rifle or overshield or whatever, that's pretty cool. But for the most part, I don't know, I could just do without some of the things going on. And lastly, we have Halo 5 Guardians. Now this is the one that actually kind of brought Halo back a little bit. Combat here is back to its streamlined ways. You just have a magnum pistol and assault rifle, no loadout and shenanigans. It's just you, your gun, and I guess a couple new Spartan abilities like the Spartan Charge, Spartan Ground Pound, and the dodge ability, the slide ability, infinite sprint, the usual stuff that was in Halo 5. It is pretty good here, alright? Now, I know it is even more Call of Duty-esque than it was with Halo 4, but here it kind of works out more. Yeah, they have the holographic sights and iron sights and stuff like that, but it's a little more akin to how Valorant does their iron sights. Like, it's not necessarily required or needed. It just helps you tighten up your aim just that ever tiny bit better, right? It's nothing insane that you really need. It's not gonna make or break your shooting style like how hip firing does in Call of Duty. It's just something that's kind of thrown in there so you have a little bit of a sharper aim when you're going for those pesky headshots on the opponents. The core gameplay here is actually much more solid, and the map design is a lot better. They still have those lane maps in the arena modes, and even have an entire mode kind of dedicated to it called Breakout, where you're basically just a Spartan with no, special abilities or shields or anything. It's just you, maybe a magnum pistol or two, or an assault rifle or something like that, and you die really, really fast. But it's all these 3-lane kind of pushes where there's a upper ground, a lower ground, and a middle ground kind of thing. And it's up to you to kind of figure out where you want to navigate, how you want to take down Spartans and stuff like that. It's more of an esports mode, but it works out really well here, and I actively enjoyed playing through it. It's a really well-made mode, and it just makes those quick bite-sized matches feel very fast-paced and fun. It's a really good time. The core actual ranked play here, which is much better than how ranked was in the Master Chief Collection in my opinion, is really strong. It's a simple leaderboard system where you have gold, silver, platinum, you get the gist, and you kind of work your way up the ranks by, completing various challenges and stuff, and it's really nice here. You got your Slayer mode, you have your, objective based mode with oddball and capture the flag and stuff of that nature. It's solid stuff, and the core gameplay is really good. I can't really get too upset. I'm not a huge fan of the Spartan charge abilities or the Spartan ground pound, but there thankfully is a mode in ranked that actually removes all of those features. So if you're looking for a more casual experience and don't mind getting ground pounded into or ground pounding others, there's that as a feature. And even if you want that in ranked, there's a team slayer option, so you can still have your fun. Or if you want to take it a little bit more seriously and have all that stuff turned off and just have your movement abilities enabled, like your Spartan dodge, hovering in midair during shooting and stuff like that, there's that allowed too. So it actually works out really well. All the guns feel very, very good, and they have a lot of callbacks to previous Halo weapons too, like the classic rocket launcher instead of the new Halo 5 Guardians rocket launcher and stuff like that. That will spawn in as power weapons, and the power weapon spawns are just really nice to mess around with. Sniper rifles, assault rifles, and DMRs will be scattered throughout the field, and it just works. It flows pretty strongly. Now the core combat for the ranked and social modes, they just work really well, and everything just connects and gels nicely. And I really do enjoy the new movement abilities, being able to dodge behind cover, dodge and weave and hover and stuff like that. It's really sick stuff, and the way the maps are laid out aren't just the typical lanes. They finally brought back that more open-ended space, being able to camp up in ledges and plaza and stuff, or sneak around different trash cans and things, or trash trucks and things of that nature, popping out at the right time to get a cheeky headshot and all that jazz. It's really good stuff, and the maps here, they just play a lot better than how they played in the previous Halo, which was Halo 4. I had a lot of fun with them, and it just worked out pretty well. Moving on from that, we have that big mode I discussed a little bit in the campaign, the Warzone mode. Now this was something pretty big. This is basically replacing big team battle, right? You have a bunch of AI minions that will spawn that you have to take out. You have to capture 3 points and hold them for the long amount of time, and you use the new rec points system to basically get power weapons, different powerful vehicles, things of that nature, so you can curb stomp the opposition. Honestly, I kind of like and hate this mode at the same time. I think the actual maps are really fun, and it's really cool to play really nicely, get a bunch of rec points for your team or for yourself, and be able to use them on the incoming enemies and completely obliterate both the AI and of course player opponents. It's really nice to know that you can have a slight chance of coming back even if you don't have the advantage to hold all the points, or the enemy team's doing a good job of holding all the points, because you can at least take your time and make a big push on the AI minions and get a little bit of extra points. The big hook of the game is if you capture all of the points, all 3 objectives, you can then storm the enemy base and destroy their core, and winning by destroying their core is always satisfying because you're basically shutting them down to their own home base, and it's just really cool to see play out. Warzone mode is a blast in all honesty when it's working. Sometimes I feel like I'm just getting curb stomped by everything here because there's so much going on. There's always people with super powerful rec cards they get, and it's kind of frustrating knowing that they just paid a lot of money to get a super good rec pack, or have been playing for a very, very long time, or something of that nature. And that's one of my major gripes with Halo 5, is a lot of the stuff is locked away behind the rec pack system. Cool armor, assassination abilities, all that stuff, it's all locked behind this weird microtransaction thing, and I just don't like it. I know they kind of used it so they could fund the free updates and stuff, but honestly, if it means not being able to get cool gun camos and having to pay for the cool gun camos and all that stuff, it just makes it a bit more frustrating. I kind of would like if they would retool the game, especially now that it's been like so many years, to a battle pass system or something. I'd rather pay that flat fee for the battle pass and know I could get extra currency to buy just another battle pass every year or something of that nature. Similar to games like Fortnite and stuff, you never have to keep buying the battle pass if you're playing it actively right, and just be able to keep getting new loot and stuff. That's a way that I could have been hooked in, but here it's still on this archaic microtransactions fest, and it just feels like a mobile total ripoff. I wasn't a fan of that, especially knowing that it ties directly to the Warzone mode, knowing you won't be able to get as good loot or equipment or powerful weapons and stuff because you're not paying for these rec packs. So instantly you're going in with an unbalanced team if one of your players doesn't have enough cash to pony up to compete with the more high octane players, the more, you know, addicted players that are going to be putting in a lot of cash. And it just makes it frustrating. It makes me want to stay far away from Warzone. And I think the developers owe to this too, because they do have their own version of big team battles with forge maps and stuff intertwined. And that's another thing I love about Halo 5 Guardians. They actually brought back some of the classic modes after a lot of fanfare. We wanted to see Firefight come back. The developers listened and brought us Firefight back, albeit not quite to what I wanted. I wanted, you know, a single player Firefight, or, you know, split screen would have been nice, but Halo 5 doesn't even have that. But thankfully here they do have Firefight in a way, and it's still nice to be able to replay the Firefight mode and take out some Covenant and Forerunner forces and have a blast with that. So glad they brought that back. They also brought back the Forge mode, so Forge maps are in multiplayer, and, you know, as you all know, people make some outstanding Forge maps, which also means, yep, that's right, custom Forge modes are also back. So Griffball, there's like a Mongoose Sumo, stuff of that nature. It's all back into the fray, and it's a ton of fun. So Halo 5 Guardians has done a lot to improve throughout the years, and I honestly am looking very much forward to Halo Infinite's gameplay. I mean, what they have on display here is really solid stuff, and honestly, it's kind of my ideal Halo. It's a nice blend of being able to have complete control of your experience. Even when the developers put in their own playlist, I still feel like I could get that traditional Halo experience because of the playlist provided. Yeah, I can see where people are coming from with some of the dodge abilities being overpowered or hover or whatever, but I think it's good fun. It's nothing too egregious, and it's still easy to punish opponents and outplay them. It's a good time. Overall, do I enjoy Halo 5 Guardians? Absolutely. I just really want my big team battle to come back in a grand way without having to play on Forge maps. It would be nice to play on some traditional developer maps and stuff, but again, hopefully they'll solve that with Halo Infinite or something of that nature down the road. It is a really great time, and yes, I even do enjoy the Warzone mode, even though I honestly would just prefer a Titanfall game or something of that nature to it. It's still really fun, and when it works and isn't overpowered wreck nonsense, it's a good time. And that's gonna do it for the multiplayer segment of the Halo retrospective. Just a little bit of my, you know, first initial thoughts of what I enjoy with the Halo games. On a complete analysis, this is, you know, from the heart kind of thing. And now we're gonna get to the ranking system, starting off with my number one favorite, which has gotta be Halo 3. I love Halo 3's combat a lot. I love how it plays out. It's just a ton of fun being able to use the different equipment, albeit a bit more simplified than how it's going to be in the future installments of Halo. It is really nice to just throw the typical power drain and bubble shield and kind of know what you're getting yourself into. Knowing, like, when you see a trip mine on the ground, you can take it out pretty easily, and sometimes you get a cheeky kill off of it. You know, that stuff is really good, and the maps are just really nice despite some of the claustrophobic ones. The bigger, more open maps are just, it's just a lot of fun times being had. My second personal favorite out of the bunch is actually Halo 5 Guardians. They've done a lot to improve the gameplay, and now, especially when you turn off all the abilities, and since there's core modes that turn off all the abilities in the main playlist, it's just great. I've had so much fun playing through it, and I genuinely enjoy all of the different combat here. It is a ton of fun, and they did a lot to make sure it panders to both the social, more casual people that don't mind dying a whole bunch, and the more competitive, hardcore people that want to take it a bit more seriously, and even allowing both of those to kind of merge with modes like Team Slayer and stuff where you can still use your Spartan abilities is good fun. I actively had a blast playing through Guardians, and despite it feeling a bit more COD-esque, and it does a good job of staying to its own Halo identity. And of course, number 3, it's gotta be Halo 2. Even though it was a bit buggy in the Master Chief Collection, I had way too much fun back in the day playing split screen, and even now enjoying it. It's just a blast, right? It is that casual, classic Halo fun that you can never get tired of, and the maps and stuff are absolutely superb and probably the best in the series. The only downside was, unfortunately, just the port I played. If it was the original, it's definitely up there, probably beating Halo 5 Guardians for me personally, but unfortunately, we're looking at the Master Chief Collection here, and we gotta be a little bit fair, you know. I do definitely still enjoy this a ton, but you can't go wrong with Halo 2, right? It's just a blast to play, and nothing about it really gets old. Moving on, we have our fourth entry, which is going to be Combat Evolved. It is still a blast to play, but unfortunately, it just hasn't personally aged well the best for me, right? It's not that it's bad at any means, it's just really punishing, even for a social casual experience. It is a ton of fun playing those big team battles, however, and I never get tired of those. But for the core 4v4 combat, it gets pretty hectic and chaotic, and once again, we kind of have that spawn issue where you'll spawn directly on top of the enemy team and things of that nature, which just causes for frustrating moments, and not in a funny haha way, more in a ow way, you know what I mean? It gets a little bit frustrating from time to time, but it's a still very enjoyable experience, and I have a blast playing through it. And of course, number 5, it's gotta be Halo Reach. It's not that it's bad, it's just random, and it has its issues, and you know, the bloom and DMR stuff, and gets kind of old after a little bit, you know what I'm saying? It's a little stale, right? You could kind of tell they were running out of fuel, and I mainly enjoyed this for the custom game modes, right? If we're talking the custom game modes, it's like the cream of the crop, personally my favorite, because there's so much stuff you can do. But unfortunately, we're just talking about the pure multiplayer experience here, and it's just okay, right? It could have been a lot better, especially with some better maps and stuff, but here it just didn't have that. And of course, lastly, we got Halo 4. It's so generic, it's so bland, it's tasteless. The only thing that I enjoy about it was the big team battle mode. And I remember back in the day there was a mode called Regicide, which was pretty cool. It kind of like was a bounty hunter kind of mode. Like it give you a marker of who was getting the most kills, who was the king of getting all the kills and stuff. And as long as you held that position, someone would have to take you out and dethrone you essentially. It was really interesting. But that was about it. Like that was the only mode I really remember playing and enjoying a lot. But Halo 4 I dropped really fast to go play that's when I got into the Call of Duty franchise, you know what I mean? That's when I really sunk my teeth into like Black Ops 2 and games of that nature, because it was so dull. I was tapped out. So hopefully later down the line they improve it and they get better with the games, and that's exactly what they did with Halo 5 Guardians, you know. That's kind of my hope, and they did that exactly with Guardians, so I can't even complain too much there. But overall, 4 just is the most generic. You know, 343 was figuring things out, so I won't be too hard on them, and obviously they got their stuff together by 5 Guardians. And that is going to do it for my overall Halo multiplayer retrospective and opinions here. This was mainly just a look at the classic games, right? This was just my first impressions and thoughts and, you know, that kind of thing, revisiting one of my favorite multiplayer experiences. Next to the Call of Duty games and the sort. I had a blast going back, and it was a ton of fun reliving this experience, especially thanks to the Master Chief Collection, being able to actually go through all of these games. Not necessarily to the standard I wanted to revisit them in, but still relatively good enough. So I will see you guys next time when we eventually cover the Halo spin-off games, Halo Wars 2, Spartan Ops, all that good stuff. And we're actually going to take a look at all the individual Halo spin-off games, and then I will finally be finished with the Halo franchise, and we'll start our next retrospective look at another video game franchise down the road. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Peace.